Oh yeah.
Once upon a time in the West, whole groups of people under duress. Nobody knows what planet they're on. Oh, yeah. Then one day, those who were awake noticed coming up on the horizon the possibility of truth coming back into the forefront. Death to the new world order. Death to the new world order. Death to the new world order. Order, I call it. It ain't no order, it's an odor. Stinks to high. It's been getting worse. More and more stinking. Just awful. Anti-human. Anti-life. Pro-death. Oh, can't stand it. But there's a shift coming in. There's hope. Hope on the horizon. And not the kind of hope they tried to shovel down our throats last time. You get me? You get me? Now I don't know what to say. I know we gotta pray. We gotta pray. Keep praying. The truth comes out.
If you think you're in trouble, you are. If you think you're gonna get away with it, you won't. If you think you're part of the solution, get busy. Because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Never has there been a more serious time. Never have the stakes been so high. It's the turning point of the entire universe, played out in political, economic, global theater.
Death to the new world order. Death to the new world order. Death to the new world order.
It's not something to sleep through. You're called to the point of decision. Do you live free or on your knees? The tyranny that is engulfing the world has always been. People have been locked up, locked down, cast out. With a world that has so much abundance and opportunity, they had none. For eons, none. Ruthless, cruel dictators and oligarchs stole everything from everyone. They were not content in simply having their own. They wanted to make sure that others had not. They wanted to ensure that others had nothing. And if they knew there was someone prospering somewhere, some distant island or continent, they would load their ships up and go to conquer them and put them into slavery and servitude. Just knowing there was someone free was enough to garner an attack. I hope you understand how evil this whole thing is, and understand what you have to do now.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. That is Death to the New World Order, and that's original music by Zeph Daniels. Welcome to the Porthole to Justice. I am your host, Amelia Duran, and today, sorry about that, today I have got a special show lined up. Several months ago, the U.S. Observer reported on the Schaeffer Cox case. In the article that I read, the government was interested in him simply because he spoke out against what he believed to be was the corrupt U.S. government. And, you'd think that this would be protected speech under the First Amendment. However, horribly, the government is setting up this for inflammatory speech. I guess according to a ruling by the Supreme Court of the United States, Brandenburg versus Ohio, an individual can be punished for inflammatory speech unless it's likely to incite an amendment of lawless actions. Apparently, Schaeffer Cox has been scrutinized and is basically being set up and entrapped by the federal government. And I have a special guest today. His name is Jacob Schreffler, and we're going to be talking about the Schaeffer Cox conspiracy. So stand by just a second. Okay. All right, getting myself set up here. All right, what's going on? Hi, welcome to the Porthole to Justice. Hold on, just...
Schreffler,
Hi.
to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I was just reading about some of the Schaeffer Cox case. You know, I've been seeing this Save Schaeffer Cox hashtag. Online, and recently you had reached out to me. Can you share with the audience a little bit about how you came upon this case and what you're going to share with us, talk about today?
Okay, well, we have with us here Brian Christie, who was a witness that was not called to the stand, and he'd like to make a statement about what's been happening. Hi, Brian.
Good morning.
Hi, welcome to the Porthole to Justice.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
So I guess he's being held for inflammatory speech. Am I correct?
Is Schaeffer held for inflammatory speech?
Is that the issue here?
I think that's part of the issue. He was convicted supposedly for murder conspiracy, but it's totally illogical because there's no target. There's no one. There's no plan. There's no target, and it was caused by entrapment. and there was an informant that told him that people were going to kill him, imaginary people were going to kill him, and if you have any idea you're going to defend yourself, I guess they call that speech conspiracy. Mm-hmm. But there's no plan, there's no agreement, so it's just amazing that they got a conviction at all.
Well, they wanted to shut him.
I'm sorry.
Schaeffer started. I was just going to say, Schaeffer started having. Schaeffer originally ran for state representative in Alaska. State representative, and he got 38% of the vote. At 24 years of age in a three-way race, he got 38% of the vote, which is unheard of. And he's a brilliant guy. So he didn't win. He was running around. He was having town hall meetings, and there was problems with the police around here, as there always is, the police force. So he was having. He started a Liberty Bell network where if you thought you were being threatened by the police, or you wanted just a witness to come and witness what was going on, and maybe video something, which is not illegal, as far as I know. He started doing that some, and I was even part of the people being called to witness. But the cops that came in, and to make a long story short, he was doing that. He didn't win, so he was having town hall meetings and doing the Liberty Bell thing. He was alerting the public and uniting the public, which was fine. We were on a right to gather and right to speak. So he was out here informing the public what was going on. He's absolutely right. So they didn't like what they heard. After he was going several states and down in the States, he was having town hall meetings and getting quite a name for himself and becoming a local hero. I thought he was great. He was tell it like it is. He's a constitutional scholar, homeschooled by his father that is a Baptist minister here in Fairbanks, and a West Point graduate. Mom is a school teacher. So the kids have a good education, far and beyond what you would get in the public school, because you start listening to Schaeffer Cox, he didn't get that education in a public school,
and so
because he sounds like one of the founding.
This was based, I'm sorry, I just wanted to give people some sort of a reference. This is out of Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska, and it's the Liberty Bell Network. It's like a peacemakers militia.
The Liberty Bell Network was just all it was if you had a problem in your home and the police were there and you thought things were getting strange or whatever, you could call the Liberty Bell number, and there'd be witnesses that would just come up and watch, do nothing else but watch, mm-hmm. and report what they see. Of course, the cops didn't like that stuff, and then he was doing that. Then he started having town hall meetings, and that just kind of added on. He's speaking out a lot, and what he's saying is absolutely true. The public needs to know it, and they wanted to shut him up. So the feds came in, and they were threatening to take his son from him. They got child protective services out there, and the feds are manipulating the whole thing. The crooks are manipulating the whole thing. They've got their hired thugs to come in, and a couple of guys that had big felonies against them. They came and give them big money to help set up this guy and bust him, because he's stealing the truth out there, and this truth can't be known to the public. So they had to shut up Schaeffer Cox. So they set him up, and you can figure the rest out. They set him up, came in here, and whisked him away and gave him a phony trial in Anchorage, where his peers are not. His hometown's in Fairbanks. His hometown has dumped him. Most people in all of the representatives are lying. They lie to us about what's going on. They lie to us
so is he
about what their job is, etc.
Is he being labeled an extremist by the Department of Homeland Security?
He's been labeled a domestic terrorist, and and according to one judge that I know in Fairbanks actually told me that Schaeffer Cox is delusional, and his court-appointed attorney, who is no longer in service in Seattle, a woman, I can't think of her name at the moment, but But she actually told us that Schaeffer is delusional, and he needs to remain in prison and have forced therapy. Forced therapy. He can't have a fair trial. He's got to remain in prison and have forced therapy. And this is his court-appointed attorney. You know, what a joke! What a joke!
So, how long has he been incarcerated?
Oh, over 8 years now, I guess. 8
years?
And 8 years, he's still in prison. He has seen his. He's got 2 kids. One is 7, 8, right in there. The little boy's turned 10. He's seen them one time in that whole time. He's seen them once that I know of. You know, it's a long ways. That's unconstitutional right there. That's cruel and unusual punishment. They've got him locked up in prison. He gets like 15 minutes on the phone a week. He gets locked down. There's one of these. It's a CMU, Communication Management Unit prison. One in Terre Haute, Indiana. One in Marion, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And they're illegal because they have not been approved by Congress. And they do torture tactics in there. They take a good leader, brilliant man like Schaeffer Cox in there. They politically disagree with him. They torture him. They lock him down for months on end. They don't feed him right. They're in horrid conditions. And they beat him. They bloody him. And to me, it is the most disgusting thing And we can't even figure out who runs these 2 prisons. And if you ask me, it's the communist Chinese that run them on the sly, you know, because they want to. There's a war out here, and the war is fought by locking us up. Anybody that stands up, a patriotic Christian that stands up for his country, they're going to come and lock you up. They'll give you a phony trial, and they'll pay off your local judges and attorneys, or intimidate the local judges and attorneys to where they won't say a word, you know. Mm-hmm. So much for and these people take an oath of office. So anybody that doesn't stand up against this is violating their oath of office, as far as I'm concerned.
So, you know, there was some suspicion as to whether or not this Liberty Bell militia was infiltrated.
Well, no. The Liberty Bell and the militia are 2 different things. It was the Peacemaker militia that he started later. And as far as infiltrating, there was no infiltration. Innocent Schaeffer Cox is getting a bunch of neighborhood people together to have a barbecue to talk about protecting the neighborhood and their families. And that is that's the militia, you know? So the feds send these guys over to go to the barbecue. There was no infiltrating. They came to the barbecue, you know? That was it.
Wow. So he was making...
So you see how they blow it. You see how they blew it all out of proportion. They call it infiltrating, and all of a sudden you think, oh, this guy's got to, you know, he's got to be... he's got this big secret organization or something like that going. But he's having a barbecue in his backyard, and the guy walks up, you know, and that's it. That's your infiltration.
How much did he get paid to do that?
I've heard $300,000 at least.
As part of the FBI's confidential informant program.
Yeah, he got $300,000 plus. He got off of a couple of felonies that he had, and he was one of them had been ripping people off for putting in sewer systems and stuff around Fairbanks, and he had a record. So he was already going away for quite a while in the real world. But they took him, give him $300,000, and say, "Here, you can have this money, but you got to help convict this guy." So they're pulling knives on these guys and everything else, and then they're trying to cover it up. But we've got the evidence now. We've got videos. We've got that they thought that were gone. So we got them, you know, and we've already proven that the FBI stole up to $3 million of Schaeffer Cox donated defense funds. They stole it. They infiltrated his defense fund is what they did. Stole his money so he can't defend himself. And then when he's making good time over the years in defending himself, then they...
Was this reported to the Attorney General?
It's been reported everywhere, I have sent more stuff to everybody you can think of, and nobody does nothing. The only person that's gotten back with me on this thing and is on the job now is Larry Klayman. Have you heard of him?
Mm-hmm. No.
You ever heard of Larry Klayman? He started Judicial Watch. Then he ran for Senate.
Oh yes.
And then he started. Now he has Freedom Watch.
I love his work actually, and I often feature him.
Great.
In the
he's
social media
He's a good Christian.
Yeah.
He's a good Christian attorney, and he gets things done. He says he is a son of Philadelphia butchers, meat packers, and he knows how to slice and dice, and that's just what we need, because what's going on out here, we got to take a lot of these people, and I think they belong in the same position that they have put this innocent man, plus 10 years, Mm-hmm. That's what needs to happen here. And everybody should call their representatives and find out. Say, we got people locked up in prison all over this country. Schaeffer Cox represents one of, I don't know, there could be 50,000 people, as far as I know, that are locked up like this to shut them up. And they're good patriotic Americans. They're not guilty. The only thing they're guilty of is being patriotic Americans. And they don't like that. The powers that be are being drained in the swamp. They're still out there, and they want to lock these people up to shut them up. They can't kill everybody, but they can convict people a lot, and goes under your noses out there,
Have you?
Yep.
I'm trying to look up some information. Maybe I can provide some resources that under the new administration, hopefully, we can see some of these.
Sure, if you know some people, get a hold of them and forward them the information. Yeah. Everybody needs to tell everybody. That's how we solve these problems, is public knowledge.
Yeah, socializing.
And weed out the representatives. Like in Alaska, we have to weed out the representatives that lie to us about it and will not do anything. And the local mayors, it's disgusting. These local mayors should have picked this up. The local newspapers local Fairbanks Daily News miners still cannot, after 8 years, get the real story out, because it involves saying bad things about the federal government. They can't get the truth out there at all. It's pretty disgusting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just insidious. I can't believe that he's been in jail for 8 years. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, 8 years. And it's not just in jail. It's an illegal torture prison is what it is. They want to have Schaeffer Cox, the good, squeaky clean, young, up-and-coming political star that could help make America great again. They want to see that guy go away. That's their political rival. They don't want that stuff going on. The heck with this good America thing going on. They want to turn it around and one world government us, Mm-hmm. And one world government, you're not going to have no rights whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then it'll be run. Yeah, that's it. It's either.
Well, I've been working. I myself personally have been working really hard because, the media is mostly being bought out by Chinese interests that are also censoring a lot of the larger platforms. Like Alex Jones' show, that are speaking to some of the corruption. I mean, a lot of people may not, like him, but free speech is everybody's interest. They're not even giving due process.
Okay, free speech is okay, but watch out what you say, because you could end up in prison.
Yeah. No, I mean, seriously, this is just...
That's what's going on.
It's crazy to me, but I do know that under the new administration that they have implemented some new organizations in the Department of Homeland Security that are addressing some of these issues. Also, I'm trying to look. There's a new that was just recently put up, and I'm trying to pull it up on my screen. I had posted a link to it. I'll send it over to you guys, but it's a new program for targeted individuals, and it's a team of really great people that provide resources to, class action lawsuits, latest information on gang stalking. It's targetedjustice.com. And it's a nonprofit organization, and they're committed to helping in situations like these. I would definitely consider reaching out to them.
Yeah, also Schaeffer has, in January 14th, he has a sentencing, resentencing hearing. And then after that, we're supposed to have a date with the Supreme Court, too. So, and this will go right along with President Trump's wish. I know President Trump would like to do away with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is...
I'm so sorry. There's a gardener. That is so obnoxious. I don't know what that's about right now. I don't even have any plants outside. It's just rocks. Yeah, I just sent you over a link to that. You know what? Now, when they actually went about, okay, he was going around and giving speeches on he was, and I guess they didn't like what he was saying in some of these speeches that were attracting a lot of attention.
Well, what he was doing, he was running around having speeches, talking to the public about how our rights are being violated, and, to restore our republic, we have to basically take charge. He's a very articulate speaker. It sounds like one of the founding fathers, and that's kind of part of the problem. He was talking like the founding fathers would have talked about, the blood of patriots and what they used to talk about. And it was quite a time back then. And he has studied those people so much, I thought he sounded like the language they used back then, because I've studied it, and it just sounds pretty like he's going to take charge and take over. And he supposedly had this big militia group, but I think it was only a handful of people. There were some neighbors and stuff he had. I don't think there were thousands myself. There weren't thousands of militia people ready to, do anything as far as I could see.
Now, we had an informant who was lying about the militia that he had, about the numbers he had, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those guys. So now we have all this.
Gentlemen, how did the original investigation come about?
The original investigation of Schaeffer?
Yeah, how did they, on what grounds, and how did they go about formalizing an investigation?
Well, they were having town hall meetings, or Schaeffer was having town hall meetings, and they were hearing and him saying this stuff, and he was exposing pedophile ring in Alaska and in the States, which is, common knowledge now. But this is Schaeffer was kind of in on the ground floor of this information. I didn't know anything much about this stuff 8-9 years ago, So he was exposing that and election fraud, et cetera, going on. And they heard about this, so they knew they had to get rid of him. So I guess they waited until he came back up here, and then they used Child Protective Services to go in his house, and they had a SWAT team go in his house, and his poor wife was traumatized. All of a sudden, bam! All these people would come in their house, and then they got him out of there. They were gonna, and there's another witness at Fort Wainwright. He sought political asylum at Fort Wainwright, and as far as I know, Schaeffer told me that they were going to give him political asylum over there, but then he got arrested after that.
Wow.
So supposedly there was I think a hearsay claim about someone having landmines, but the landmines never existed, and the person who supposedly had them probably didn't exist either. And this was the paper excuse for starting the investigation. But I think the real story has to do with the pedophile ring and the connections that are in with that pedophile ring. It's well known that there were some prostitutes. We assume they're prostitutes that were killed back in around 2003. One's name is Michelle Roth. The other is Desiree Lekinoff. And they were connected to a businessman named Joseph Boehm, who owned a mid-sized chain store in Alaska. And he had information about the deaths that the FBI did not act on. And bizarrely, the federal people at the federal level shut down a local investigation of a pedophile ring that's linked to this. So this Joseph Boehm, he pled guilty to, I think, conspiracy to sex traffic minors that were down to 13 years old. And Schaeffer says that he got information from about 8 families that people at this man's house, possibly without this man's knowledge, that there were people at this man's house that were having sex with 4 or 5-year-olds. And so because Schaeffer had that Liberty Bell network, he would have been responsible for sounding the alarm or having witnesses or trying to do an investigation into this corruption about this pedophile ring on behalf of these 8 families. I believe they met because he was running for Alaska State Assembly. And so when he came out with this in a town hall meeting, this pedophile ring thing is a motivation to shut Schaeffer down and to notice him. I think that's the real story, because obviously if they shut down the local investigation at the federal level, then there must be people at the federal level that are involved or have some kind of complicity or something, or else there's some other explanation there. I mean, we got to remember that in Alaska, this is where there was this Ted Stevens bribery scandal, and the U.S. Attorney's office there was very corrupt. I mean, we had a U.S. attorney that was hanged, that supposedly hanged himself in his basement after this Ted Stevens scandal happened. And these were the same people working on Ted Stevens' case that were working on Schaeffer Cox's case. So we can't assume that everything's on the up and up there in the U.S. Attorney's office in Alaska.
It is not. You can Google Fuller Pen prosecutor corruption. If it's still up there, you can get a little insight as to the problem that we have there. And then there's
So fast forward to today, has anything been done about this pedophile ring?
No. Hey, even Senator Sullivan came out with he was going to go after the pedophile, and all this stuff. And he came out in public and said it, and there's videos out there that show this. He was going to go after this pedophile ring and do this and that. So Loretta Lynch calls him up on the phone and says, "Hey, Senator Sullivan, you leave our pedophile alone. He testified for us, so now he can go and do his own thing now, And so Senator Sullivan said, "Oh, okay." So he shuts up, and the pedophile is still out there, and Senator Sullivan has no idea who Schaeffer Cox is. You can go on YouTube and look up Howard Senator Dan Sullivan shucks and jives the Schaeffer Cox case. You get that? Howard Senator Dan Sullivan shucks and jives the Schaeffer Cox case, and there was a letter after years of request for help for this man's constituent. He's a U.S. senator. Schaeffer Cox is a citizen. He sends me this letter. So this letter I put on YouTube, and if you look at that, Rudy Davis will he narrates this letter, and look at what Senator Dan Sullivan, your U.S. representative, and he pushes himself off as a patriotic U.S. Marine. Look at what's in the content of that letter. Howard Senator Dan Sullivan shucks and jives the Schaeffer Cox case. And boy, he sure does. Along with Lisa Murkowski and Don Young is just silent on the whole thing. Except one day, a local friend of mine and I are Schaeffer supporters. We got on the radio and pinned Don Young down, and he was lying to the entire state, on the radio.
So what evidence is he being held on? What are the grounds?
Well, that he was convicted by a jury that hasn't been presented the evidence.
Yeah, there was no evidence. He didn't get convicted on evidence. He just got convicted because they want to shut him up, and they're big shots. They couldn't do it to Senator Stevens. They got caught. They got their hands slapped by Judge, what's his name, Sullivan, Judge
Stevens, is it?
Judge Sullivan. I don't even know if he's still in there anymore, but there's Judge Emmett Sullivan.
Judge Emmett Sullivan is what I have here in front of me.
Yeah, Judge Emmett Sullivan knows what's going on. He had a report done to him. He looked into this stuff, and he got into a report. You can find the report by looking up, just Google, let's see.
Called the Schulke Report. So in the Ted Stevens case...
It's a Henry F. Schulke report.
That's what I'm looking at.
Judge Emmett Sullivan.
Misconduct. Yeah. It's a misconduct case. It's called the Stevens case, and it was released August 2011, it looks like.
Yeah, and it goes into a lot more. Yeah, so Judge Emmett Sullivan knows that this is going on, and he sits up there and does nothing about it. He's silent, and then he gets passed off as a real good judge and everything. He's another crook.
So the connection
there's the book that proves it right there.
The connection there with Ted Stevens' case is that one of the women who allegedly was having underage sex with Bill Allen was a witness against Ted Stevens, and he, I think, got a secret immunity deal. Obviously, they didn't prosecute him. And but this woman he allegedly had underage sex with was named Bambi Tyree, and she was connected to this Ocean View Drive house and this Joseph Boehm who pled guilty to conspiracy to sex traffic minors. Okay, so that shows that there's all these connections there. Bambi Tyree's father supposedly did work on Ted Stevens' house. Now we don't, think that necessarily that Ted Stevens had anything to do with this, because this was some scam they were running on Ted Stevens to get Obamacare passed.
Yeah.
But the connection between this woman and Joseph Boehm and Bill Allen, who are both Joseph Boehm and Bill Allen are big businessmen in Alaska.
So apparently there was a withholding of exculpatory evidence. Has there been any accountability or reports to the Department of Justice?
No. You can't get anything in the Department of Justice. That's like the local people say, "Oh, that's a federal issue." Well, the federal people are not going to investigate themselves, and surely the people that pull these things aren't going to do anything about it. And it's still the deep state operatives in the DOJ. Trump may be in charge now, but there's still these people in there pulling this stuff, and they are fighting. And frankly, I am concerned about Schaeffer Cox and many other people's lives because, they don't want to. It's just like Hitler did it, and he just made people disappear.
Is there
World War?
Yeah. This is a Holocaust. This really is. It's a Holocaust. It's there's There's no like prison camps or anything like that, but they're still operating.
Oh, there are.
They
Communication Management Unit prisons. There's 2 of them, and there's a lot of people convicted. There's a lot of private prisons that need tenants. They want to rent those rooms out in those prisons, so they get convictions. That's what's going on. There's a whole bunch of them. There's thousands of them. There's thousands, tens of thousands. Who knows? There's people that have been in prison 35 years.
So
never had a fair trial. They're in there to shut them up.
For my listeners, gentlemen, is there like a defense fund for Schaeffer Cox if people are interested in helping?
Yeah, there's a defense fund. What is it, Jacob? You got it?
If you go to freeschaeffer.com, you can get the information. Last I heard from Schaeffer, we're supposed to send those things either to send money either to his commissary fund through the prison, or else send it through Angela Clemens. So Angela Clemens has a website, and she takes money for him. I think her group is called Schaeffer's Angels.
Schaeffer's Angels.
And we can get the information for that. It's available on freeschaeffer.com. That's FREESCHAEFFER.
Oh, and then
Schaeffer.com.
And then there's fundraiser, FUNDRAZR.com. That's the one I was trying to think of.
Well, my son's going to be home from school soon, but, I thank you guys for coming on, and I invite you to come back on again if there's any updates on the case.
Sure, anytime. That's what I do for 8 years. I've been exposing this for 8 years. The whole world has heard this stuff.
And
everybody needs to spread the word and demand justice for Schaeffer Cox and all the people that have been, they need to look at all those convictions of these rats that are in here doing this stuff, like the Anchorage federal prosecutors.
As far as accountability to the federal prosecutors and dealing with this pedophile ring in Alaska, what I think they need is Alaska needs to have a grand jury to investigate, just generally investigate everything, just like Pennsylvania did with these priests recently.
Larry Klayman wants to come out with grand juries now, too. So support Larry Klayman, look up Schaeffer Cox, and spread the word to everybody about this blasphemy.
Sure. I'll be sharing this in our network. Gentlemen, I thank you so much for coming on today. And, I'm gonna wrap up the show, but folks, this is just outrageous, and I encourage you to look into some of this content that I'm presenting to you today. I'm just now becoming more aware of the Schaeffer Cox story, and I think that this is something we're going to be following in the future in Social Media News Network. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Porthole to Justice, the window to the truth. I am going to close this out with a song, Truth Seeker, and this has been another episode of Porthole to Justice off the cuff. Thank you. I will call you. I'll call you in just a minute.
Get down, get back to what you were doing. Get down, get back. Get down, get back. Get down, get back to what you were doing. Dreamer's gonna dream, seeker's gonna seek, regardless of what's thrown at them to believe. Dreamer's gonna dream, seeker's gonna seek, we're standing on the fringes, reclaiming humanity. I see a future of conscious beings fighting against this construct of assimilation and conflicting modalities. After reading the history, I've come to the notion that we may be just banging the last gongs of civilization again. Once a society loses its ideals, there is no reason to remember the past. And then the children become a blank slate, which is quite empowering for those who want to control. Yeah.